Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Matt Watson, who has been on this podcast before talking about his three-time Practical Founder SaaS product company exits. In his last two companies, Matt used offshore development talent that worked so well, so efficient, and so effective that he started helping friends and created a company called Full Scale. He's now the CEO and founder of Full Scale, which has over 300 developers in the Philippines that work with North American software companies to help them scale faster and grow more efficiently. So today we're talking about the offshore development challenge in general, what works, what doesn't, and how practical SaaS founders are doing it these days. Matt is an amazing resource who has his own podcast and video channel, and he's out there on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of great insights for practical founders today. And we're live with Matt Watson, CEO and founder of Full Scale, and a second timer on this podcast. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, Matt. Good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Well, I see you a fair bit. We go to the same conferences, we hang out. You showed up at our Practical Founders Summit with all the founders in my peer groups in August. And I just got your email today, your Thursday email. I read it like I read it every week. You're talking about practical founders again. And, we're kind of two peas in a pod, two guys who are helping a lot in the ecosystem and contributing out there. I love your content, man.
Thank you. I had breakfast with somebody today, and he was talking about raising a bunch of money and stuff. And I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Go follow Greg Head. You need to be practical. Raise a little bit of money, but don't go raise $15 million. Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, your Startup Hustle newsletter and your podcast, you're interviewing founders every week and doing that. It's kind of parallel to a practical founders thing. You're talking about the SaaS game for entrepreneurs and what's working, not very practical, really right to the point. I know you've got a business here, and full disclosure, Full Scale, your new company, and you personally are a sponsor of the Practical Founder podcast. So you've been a friend of Practical Founders. We're friends and help each other out. You've helped a lot of my founders. Several of the founders in my peer groups are using Full Scale. We'll talk about Full Scale there, but you're just one of the helpful, wise guys out there. And the funny thing is we discovered I don't know that we're saying anything different at the top of the mountain there. I know you're more product focused than I am. And let's say I'm more business and creation focused. So what have you been helping founders with for the last few years with the Startup Hustle podcast?
Well, I love interviewing other entrepreneurs and honestly just learning from them. I learn something new from them every day.
Yeah.
And kind of like you publish a great newsletter that goes with your podcast and stuff. And that's actually how I think you caught my attention on LinkedIn, is like you do such a good job of distilling down like lessons learned from interviewing people. And I really enjoy that same thing. I get to meet with absolutely incredible people, hear incredible stories, and have learned so much from all these other people. And I think you would probably agree with me when I say, like, there's a lot of patterns to all of this. Like, you would talk to 1,000 entrepreneurs, you're going to hear the same story over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say I've heard it all and seen it all, but I kind of feel like that after 1,300 podcast episodes.
Oh my gosh, man.
But I love talking to other entrepreneurs. At heart, I'm a product guy and an entrepreneur, and I'm more of an introvert, but I love talking to other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, I've been using the story lately, Matt, that I'm Greg GPT. I've been was in the software business, grew $200 million companies. I have my own patterns and models, and I've been pre-training them on all the conversations I've had. I'm inside 40 businesses a month. I'm doing the podcast. And so like I'm seeing the patterns and the variations of the patterns, of course, the patterns of the patterns. And you're doing the same thing. So there's Matt GPT as well. But you kind of have a product brain. You're an entrepreneur. You've been a CEO of 3 software companies, or 2 software companies. You were CTO of the first one there that I interviewed you about on the podcast, Vin Solutions, a great practical founder, super success story in Kansas City. Why don't you briefly explain your background to people, and we can get some context about where we're headed. We're going to talk about Full Scale and the offshoring game today.
Yeah, I've been a software engineer for basically 25 years, been an entrepreneur for 20 of those years. Started 3 different SaaS companies that I sold. The first one I started, I was like 22 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I really had like 2 or 3 years of experience of like being a software developer. But like a lot of other entrepreneurs was, a problem solver looking to help other people. Somebody told me they needed help uploading pictures of cars to the internet. And I'm like, I can probably figure out how to upload some files to the internet. And a business was born. And like that was how it started.
Mhm.
And because this guy had 20 car dealers he was going around taking all these pictures for and had all this data, it's like, I can help you with that. And I think it's just that kind of attitude of trying to help other people is how a lot of other entrepreneurs start. They see a problem, they jump on it. And yeah, that business ended up growing to about 35 million a year in revenue. It was basically bootstrapped the whole way. We never took any kind of institutional investment. We had, Visa and MasterCard that were maxed out a few times. And we didn't pay our bills a few times. That was one way to stretch your working capital. But we were at heart practical founders, I guess. We actually tried to raise money.
Right, Matt?
That was Vin Solutions, yeah.
Yeah.
We
Which is
tried
still
to raise
famous
money.
in the auto dealer industry. It's one of the most popular CRMs. It's got to be a massive company now.
Yeah, it's still the number one CRM. I think they have like 7 or 8,000 car dealerships that use the system, and there's only 17 to 20,000 car dealerships in the whole United States that are franchise dealers. So they have like a 40% market share or something like that today.
So you sold that when you were still a pretty young guy, right?
I was 29 years old.
Yeah, right. Golly. And you got
Yeah.
a big pile of money and everything. And then you decided to go out and build, your own software companies after a while.
I should have retired.
Well, yeah, we know we can't do that, which is why you're doing full scale and while I'm doing this. So I get it. But Stackify was one of those you mentioned on your previous podcast interview.
Yeah, same thing. It's like I had my own problems I wanted to solve as the chief technology officer of Vin Solutions. It's like there's got to be some better tools out there. So I went to go and build those tools, and then quickly realized that selling those tools to software developers was brutal. Like software developers don't buy anything; they don't have a budget. They think they can build your thing. They think there's an open source version of it. Like they're the worst people in the world to sell something to. That's what I learned. But managed to still make it work. Still made the Inc. 5000, still got several $1 million a year in revenue, and eventually, exited that. But it was brutal. It was really hard.
So you were CEO of that one.
Yeah.
And you were CTO of Vin Solutions, and you've always, owned the product, I'm sure, in all your businesses. But
always been the product guy.
Yeah. And you sold Stackify, and you sold Stackify, right?
Yeah, we sold Stackify, and in the middle of that, that's actually how I started Full Scale, which was an accidental business, actually.
Yeah. Well, what happened there?
Well, I needed to hire about 10 software developers, and there was no way I was going to be able to afford them in Kansas City. And over about a 3-month period, we lost 3 of our key developers. Our CTO got recruited away to go work at Azure, Microsoft Azure. One of our guys got recruited away to go work at AWS, and then I think somebody else resigned because they could work from home for a high salary. And basically, I took all of their salaries combined and went and hired 10 people in the Philippines for the same amount of money.
Wow!
Because I really needed a lot more people for the projects that we needed to do, and I had a friend that already had a couple employees in the Philippines doing PHP development and WordPress and this stuff. And we set it up as like a little partnership and thought, well, maybe somebody else could use help doing this. If we ever make any money helping somebody else, we'll just create a little partnership. And then over the next 18 months, we hired 100 people. So
for friends who needed.
Yeah. So 18 months later, we were doing $6 million a year in revenue for this little service business that was purely an accident, but was the fastest growing company I've ever started.
Interesting. And ironically, probably profitable throughout.
I would say actually the first couple of years, it wasn't very profitable.
Oh, okay.
I mean, service companies are more profitable, but the problem is you think about hiring 100 people, I got to buy 100 computers.
Yeah.
I got to go get office space for them and buy 100 desks and 100 chairs and, pay 3 months rent for a new office and all the, security deposits. So, I mean, it was cash flow intensive at the very beginning, just getting it going. There was quite a bit of cash that was needed. But past that, yeah, it's way more profitable, like cash flowing business once you kind of get going, for sure.
Right. Well, isn't that interesting? Most of the practical founders started some other business before, sometimes a service business, and found a SaaS business and grew it out of that. And they said, "Thank God, I'm getting out of the services business, project-based, services business, digital
I
agency
hear
or
that a
whatever."
lot.
Yeah, of course. And we're hearing the same damn things. We're following the same patterns. But you
And I
went
went the other way.
yeah, you went the other way, and I did as well. But you got hundreds of employees now. How many employees now at full scale? How many? How
There's
many?
about 300.
300. And what percent, most of them are developers, testers.
Yeah. So out of that we have about 30 people in our admin staff that are, not revenue generating.
Right.
And then we have 250 or so software engineers, all in the Philippines.
Right. And that game, which founders are used to, I was in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago and I met some people and they said, "Man, we need to raise some funding so I can hire local developers." I said, "People still do that?" Most practical founders are saying, "I've got a team somewhere." And it's pretty rare to actually have that starter team in the States or all of the starter team here in the States these days.
Well,
So, yeah.
I mean, especially if you're bootstrapping it. One of the companies
Yeah.
I'm involved with in Kansas City emailed me just this morning and they're like, "Hey, we've got this project we need to do. I found some developer in Pakistan who will do it for $1,200 a month."
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that'll get the project done. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reality is most software developers around the world make $1,000 to $4,000 a month, except in the United States.
1 to 4,000.
Yeah.
So that's 15 grand a year, 50 grand a year,
Yeah.
US dollars.
Yes. All around the world. And
Yeah,
90% of software developers are not in the United States either.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm talking about the practical founder revolution, and you're there as well. You did bootstrapping when it was hard. You had to really code fast and sell hard. And it was unusual to build a scaled up
One of the
bootstrap
first SaaS
business
companies.
in a vertical. That was really, really hard. But software is a lot easier to build these days, relatively. And going to market's easier to build. And the reason is there's better tools. You just sign up with AWS for pennies. And you can get, I don't know, 3x the developer talent and hands-on keyboards for the same dollar in R&D and so before we're even talking about AI productivity, we just had the productivity of outsourcing development and offshoring development to other parts of the world that have smart people for a third of the salary. Kind of thing. And people do that across other parts of their business. So it's pretty rare that practical founders are not offshoring some part of their development.
I mean, the most common thing I hear when I talk to other entrepreneurs is they're very used to having virtual assistants. I think you have some virtual assistants helping you that do marketing or data entry or help them check their email or book travel, all these different things. And more than half the time, those people are in the Philippines. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And I just always tell people, I'm like, the same reason you love those virtual assistants to do all that work for you, you will love the software developers. Like there's amazing software development talent there as well. And there's talent everywhere, not just in the Philippines, but the Philippines is great because of English fluency is one of the main reasons to be there.
Yeah. And obviously when we call a bank or something, it's somebody with a Filipino accent is generally answering the phone and doing it well. We don't get that from India. We don't get that from Eastern Europe. We don't get it from Latin America in English. So that's a main driver there.
Yeah, like my sister-in-law, my wife's from the Philippines, and my sister-in-law worked at the call center at Expedia. Yeah. But yeah, there's millions of people there that work for eBay and Amazon and JP Morgan and all these different places. There's millions and millions of people. And they're the best jobs you can get there.
Oh my gosh.
Working for these American companies.
Yeah, you get on the phone and you make 2 times the salary of everybody else.
Yeah.
And you're not doing
they're very good jobs.
Those kind of jobs. Awesome. So let's talk about full scale. What's the focus there? You have development resources. What kind of companies do you help? What specifically do you do? What do you not do? And what kind of companies don't you help?
Yeah, so we're focused on staff augmentation. So, if you came to me and said, "Matt, how long is it going to take to build this little mobile app, and how long and how much?" I'd be like, nobody really knows. That's super difficult with software development, doing bid based
project stuff.
project based stuff. we don't do that. So, we work with companies that usually have some other kind of chief technology officer or in-house development team, and they just need more people. Kind of like
Yeah.
my first company. It's like I
Yeah.
was basically the CTO. We had software development team leads and architects and all this stuff. We just needed more people, and so that's where offshore works really, really well. If in-house you have a CTO or lead developer, somebody that can drive the product, drive the architecture, drive all that higher level stuff, break down the work, and then delegate it to, other people around the world that can go execute on it, the model works extremely well. And that's why we're focused on staff augmentation, because that works really well. Where it doesn't work really well is where you have a project manager in the middle. Like, I know a company that has it's a very similar business to ours in Mexico, but none of their employees in Mexico speak very good English. And so there's like a project manager in the middle. So you are only allowed to talk to this project manager, and then the project manager runs and meets with the development team. Like, that does not work very well. And some people who have a bad taste from offshore have done that through India or different places where
Right.
they're not dealing directly with the team. They're dealing with these project managers in the way. And that's why it doesn't work. So you've got to get the project managers out of the way. You got to do it more like staff augmentation. So you're working directly with the developers, and you got to hire high quality developers. So one of the other things we see, we talk to a lot of developers in the Philippines we could hire that simply aren't good enough for us. And the reason why is, if you came to me and said, hey, build this project, I could hire that, we'll call them bad developer, get them to do the project. I would oversee the project and then give you the final project, right? But if your product is the person, they're not good enough. Like, I couldn't put them in front of you and they would be a good enough developer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's not just, maybe it's, is it just the skills, or is it their ability to interact as a team member, a productive team member on your team? Right.
A lot of it is communication, collaboration, just higher level problem solving, critical thinking. There's a lot of developers, and we need them, that are just doers. You tell them what to do and they'll go do it. But they don't have very good communication skills. They don't show up to daily stand-ups and collaborate very well, right? And of course, our clients don't really want that. They want somebody who's an expert that will show up, communicate with you, work together and collaborate on building software.
Well, that's hard to find in the States, is engineers who show up for the daily stand-up.
Yeah, it can be hard. Yep.
Yeah, get the things done and everything. Well, let's just be clear for SaaS founders out there and distinguish between a body shop that says, we'll help find you somebody in the world. That's out there. And we'll build it for you, like an agency or some guy that knows some people will build it for you. Staff augmentation, and the way what Fullscale does. It's been around for a long time, and it's been very successful. That you say, I got a leader and a core team, and I need 5 more people that operate daily as a team together.
Yeah.
And so they call you and say, I need 5 people, and they look like this, and 2 like this, and 2 like that, and another one like this, and they need to fit our culture, and they need to fit the kind of thing we're working on. And you either have them on the bench or you hire those people and you manage them, but then they're really part of the core
they're really
team
contractors for a client.
Yeah.
But there's some key advantages to working through an agency. Yes, an agency like us does add some to the cost. You could go recruit and find somebody yourself, which is a pain. Yeah. It's also hard to understand the culture of who you're hiring and how to work with them and all that. And we help bridge that gap. But for those developers, imagine being the random software developer who lives in some remote city in the Philippines or India, or pick your place, who is working remotely for some company in the United States, and the job security and risk that they take as well. Yeah, and up and down. Yeah. So a lot of them are very nervous about that too. They don't want to work remotely for some company in another country that they know nothing about, and they could lose their job at any time. They could stiff them. They could not pay them, as working as a freelancer and stuff. And this happens all the time. I see this all the time. Versus if they're like, no, I work for a company in the Philippines that this is what they do. They have hundreds of employees. They give me the job security. They give me benefits.
They're employees.
You're an employee there. They do ongoing training and mentoring and all these different things. That's the difference, right? And that's one of the advantages of working through a dev agency, be it Fullscale or somebody else. If they're doing this the right way, is all these extra benefits. I mean, yeah, you can go on Upwork and you can find some random person or some random freelancer, but they on the other side don't have great job security either. And then you have to kind of deal with all the junk of Upwork and
overhead.
Are they a good person? Are they not a good person? They actually have like 3 jobs, or they just disappear, and like, all the weird stuff.
Right. So what kind of people are you bringing on? I mean, there's huge technical universities everywhere in the world. Do you hang out by the universities and get the cream of the crop coming out of there? How do you do it?
Well, so we have about 250 software developers, but what's interesting is most of them are actually senior level developers. Most of our clients, if we go to them and say, hey, for $25, $30 an hour, you could hire a junior level developer. For an extra $5 an hour, would you hire a senior level developer that has 5 more years of experience? What do you think they say, Greg?
Yeah, of course. Supersize me. Yeah,
give me the senior person.
Yeah,
so that's kind of a universal problem with software development in general, right? Like everybody would rather have the senior person and pay a little bit more, because usually you get maybe twice as much output out of them.
Yeah.
So we don't hire a whole lot of junior people. You may find this interesting. We hire about 10 or so a year from the local colleges. And they're super bright people that we hire. We call them whiz kids internally.
Yeah.
And we put them through this fast track program. But then what's funny is we actually kind of end up giving them to our clients for like almost nothing.
To get their experience up.
Just please take them for 3 months, 6 months, get them some experience. Because nobody really wants entry-level people. But you know what happens almost every time? They join their team, they work with them for 2 or 3 months, and then we go back to them. We're like, hey, it's great that, they kind of did this sort of internship with you. We want them back. And every single time they're like, no, you're not taking this person back.
That's awesome.
So,
well, what's unique about the Philippines and the developers there that makes it your focus of your company? Full Scale is focused on that region. It has a regional focus. What are the advantages of working with developers on your team in the Philippines?
I think there's a few things. We mentioned earlier English fluency. Most people don't realize there's more people who are fluent in English in the Philippines than there is in England.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big country of 115 million people. And, there are other dev agencies that are like, oh, we do software development in Costa Rica. Like, oh, that's great. There's only 5 million people total in Costa Rica. There's not a lot of software developers. There's, very small number, right? So the Philippines is a bigger country. Most people don't really realize that. And so there is a larger, talent base there. And English fluency, as I mentioned, is huge. And for me, software development is so much about communication. If I can't communicate to somebody like what needs to be done, and they don't, ask the clarifying questions, and we collaborate, and we have very good communication skills back and forth, it doesn't really matter how good of an engineer they are if they can't understand what needs to be done. So to me, that part of the communication and English and fluency of that is so critical. But otherwise, like culture-wise, their culture is very similar to American culture. Like they watch all the same crap we do on Netflix and watch all the same movies we do, and like culture-wise, they're very, very close to us. And one of the best things I'm sure you've seen this with your assistants that help you is just their like personality and attitude and hospitality.
Yeah.
Like they are the most, stereotypically hospitality wise, like the nicest people in the world.
Yeah.
They're just absolutely amazing to work with.
Yeah. And I also find that let's say culture, when I have some people help with the videos that I'm going to put on YouTube, and I've talked to people all over the world about helping me. And half the time, I don't think they're hearing what I'm saying, and because it's coming back to me at a different level.
Yeah.
If I get to Philippines and I say, all right, let me just repeat what I'm thinking and what I want and how this works and so forth, and they repeat it right back to me, and then it's just, it's like a simple email conversation. Great, I got it, right? And like I'm talking to somebody here, and it's very different and around the world. And I know many folks have had challenges. Sometimes Eastern Europe has those kind of challenges. Generally, India has challenges. I told them this and I got that. And, it's very different. So I totally see that.
I mean, you just highlighted the problem, right? You're like, okay, these people speak English. I talk to them, but they don't seem to actually understand what I'm telling them.
Yeah.
And they will just say yes because they want to be nice and you're the boss, and they don't want to challenge you. They don't want to question you.
Yeah.
but then you don't get the final outcome that you wanted, right? And so that you just nailed like why we have been so much more successful in the Philippines with doing this.
Right. And they're really excited to work on great stuff. And I can
They
hand
are.
out not just menial things, but like, there's some thinking involved here and you get to drive it and
Well,
they'll pay you reasonably. And they're like, this is awesome.
that highlights another key problem is some people think of like, okay, I'm going to hire people offshore and I'm only going to pay them, $3,000 a month, $5,000 a month, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give them this crappy work to do.
Yeah.
These people don't necessarily want to do that crappy work either.
Yeah,
they want to be
senior people.
challenged. They want to do complex stuff. They want to be challenged as well. They don't want to just do this crappy work.
Yeah.
They want to do the hard stuff. And so that's one of the things I always remind people. I'm like, give them hard stuff to do, challenge them. They want to learn. They want to do this stuff just like anybody else does.
This week's podcast is brought to you by my friends at Fullscale. Last year, I interviewed three-time software founder Matt Watson on this podcast about his successful practical founder journeys. Matt leveraged offshore development talent in his last two SaaS companies to hire quickly and scale up efficiently. His top developers and designers were offshore in the Philippines, but they weren't one-off contractors and they weren't difficult to manage outsourced agencies. He found an endless supply of top tech talent who became savvy members of his team, working hard every day to get things done. So for his fourth tech venture, Matt created Fullscale, which is one of the fastest growing software development companies in any region. Fullscale vets, employs, and supports over 300 professional developers and designers and testers in the Philippines who can augment and extend your core dev team. I know practical SaaS founders who use Fullscale to grow faster and avoid the product development nightmares that can kill a growing startup. So visit fullscale.io and see why their approach works so well and book a call to see if they can help you. Now back to our podcast. Well, Matt, when you first got into the software business, 20-something years ago, you were the whiz kid, super coder, entrepreneur, all in, builder kind of guy. But back then, nobody was doing anything overseas in software development. It was starting with very big companies in India, I guess, and that kind of thing. But we all went through this realization that we get to give them the menial thing and that's a lot cheaper and so forth. But then we realized this is the top tier of the college, the university system coming through here, and they're way smarter than my guys here. And over time, we've all realized that everybody's human. There's really smart people. There's really hardworking people everywhere in the world. And the more senior stuff, the more thinking, more design, more strategy gets moved overseas every year. It's not just that low-level junior stuff. So I think there's a realization in the global world now that serious stuff can be done anywhere.
I mean, there's smart people everywhere.
Yeah.
There's great colleges everywhere.
Yeah.
There's also bad developers and bad employees everywhere, including my own family. I would not recommend that you hire, right? Like there's good and bad people everywhere. And, 90% of software developers are not in the United States. That number goes up every year. I mean, here, I think the university or the entire state of Kansas here only produces, it's like 200 or 300 computer science grads a year in the whole state, right? Like there's just not enough people. And there's only a certain amount of people that could even do these types of jobs. Like when they say that like, oh, we're going to take truck drivers and teach them to be software developers, like that's never going to work, right? Like software developers are a certain type of personality. They tend to be more introverted, more logical thinkers, and have a certain level of IQ. I mean, there's only like 15% of the population that has the level of IQ to do the job. But that same 15% does a lot of other jobs, right? I mean, they may be other types of managers or accountants or doctors, engineers, all these things. There's just not enough people. And of course, this top 15% of the population that is super smart is wanted for a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, and I'm sure your team, I know you spent a lot of time in the Philippines with your team. I'm sure they're really grateful to have an awesome workspace and career opportunities and work on senior projects and have you finding great clients that they can, participate with and match up. And I'm sure they're very enthused to be a part of the Fullscale adventure.
Yeah, a lot of them get to work on really cool interesting projects for American companies. I mean, one of our customers is the largest movie theater chain in the world,
Yeah.
and the largest WordPress hosting site in the world. And
Mm,
I mean, they get to work on some cool companies and do some cool
right.
stuff. And yeah, I mean, they're great opportunities, like great career opportunities for anyone.
Is there anything that they don't do? I mean, is it every development language, AWS, Azure, React, et cetera, PHP, WordPress? Is there anything that they don't speak that you can't find or isn't a good focus for you?
It's easier, of course, to find the most common things,
Right.
most common programming languages, the most, common tech stacks and stuff. It's harder to find, somebody who programs in Haskell or Rust or, Clojure and some of these weird things. There's just not a lot of people that do it.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people there that have ever had the opportunity to do
Yeah.
it, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do is the most common, like JavaScript stuff and .NET and Python and Java and, just your real common stuff that a lot of companies do.
So StaffAug is adding team members to an existing development team and keeping the project management, the architecture, and let's say the product strategy inside the company. So this isn't for an entrepreneur that says I have an idea and I need a few engineers to go build this, right? If they don't have a little dev leadership that's
It
couldn't
can
guide
it
it.
can work that way. I mean, we
Okay.
we have clients that work that way where we do everything for them. And one of the things we do offer is a fractional like product operations person
Mm,
who is one of my absolute favorite things. Somebody to like run the team, help keep everyone on track with requirements and the roadmap and sprint planning and all these things like that. We do provide that, and we have some founders that we work with that they have kind of the product vision and they leverage this kind of other
okay.
product person to
Yeah.
help run the team. But I'll be honest, I always recommend to our client, they're like, hey, you're better off if you have even like a fractional CTO or fractional product person, fractional lead developer, whatever, to help. Like I would actually prefer that they do, because I think it'll all run smoother.
In
It will
between
run
the
better.
entrepreneur and the developers.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it'll actually run better. So I
So,
recommend it. But
and what's a typical size team that somebody says I'm interested? Do they start at 3 or 5 and then it expands from there, or what's a typical scenario?
I mean, a lot of times it starts with one or two. I mean,
Okay.
we have clients, yeah, that are just one. Like one of the people in your Practical
Yeah, yeah.
Founders
Mhm.
group that's a customer. They had one, and that's fine. I mean, if somebody needs 100 developers, they don't come to us. They go to
Yeah, yeah.
Accenture,
Yeah.
right? But if they need 1 to 5, yeah, I mean, companies like ours are a great solution. And we don't have any contracts. We have no contracts. So it's all month to month, and we've got to do a good job every month, or they don't stick around, and they've got to have work to do.
Yeah. And they get 1 or 2 or 3, they're gonna stick around for a while. This works really well,
They
and
do.
it's not like they need to get through a hump and, a big project, and then we're back to not spending. It's so efficient and so
I
productive.
mean, some people do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some do scale up and down. They're like, hey, I
Mm,
had 2 developers. We finished this thing. We don't have enough workload now. Now we just need one. I mean,
yeah,
that kind of stuff happens. Sure.
yeah. What does a typical cost, just to have people
Hmm.
get a perspective? I think they're estimating what I could do locally to get it, some guy in Pakistan to get it, do
Yeah.
something on Upwork and India versus, Eastern Europe versus
Hmm.
other regions in the Philippines. What can you say about cost?
Yeah. So we charge on average about $5,000 to $6,000 a month for a full time software developer, and that's like $30 to $40 an hour.
Wow.
And those rates are all over the board, right? Locally, if you hired a dev agency, and there's a very good dev agency that came to your Practical
Yes.
Founders group
Yeah, right.
that you're friends with, a lot of the local ones are going to charge, if it's all local talent, they're going to charge 170, $225 an hour.
An hour for a senior
And
dev, like your senior devs.
and honestly, sometimes companies need that, especially if they're at the type of work they're like, we don't know what to do. We're trying to figure out what to do.
Mhm.
Sometimes you need to pay more. You're like, well, we need to figure out, how do we even build this product? How do we architect it? How do we figure out what to do? But then once you figure out what to do, and you're like, hey, now we have all this work to do. Yeah, you can hire somebody offshore for a fraction of the cost to like just go execute and do the work. And that's why a mix is good. Like I always recommend people to have a mix, like have a fractional CTO, have some local people that can drive the strategy, but then have people that can go execute on the strategy at a much lower cost.
It used to be, I don't know if this is the same, maybe the world is changing. It used to be that you did some offshore development to get going. You're outsourcing to start because you can't afford to do it local and you're bootstrapping, the great practical founder story. But eventually you need to bring it in-house and you get the CTO and the team and start migrating and so forth. Do people take it all the way in-house anymore, or is
No.
a staff aug hybrid? Is that the way this goes forward?
Well, and I would argue we are in-house, right? Like our employees work
Okay,
directly for the client anyways. They may not be a W-2 employee, but I mean,
right.
we have team members that have worked for the same client for 5 years,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean, they kind of are in-house from that perspective. But,
interesting.
one of our clients the other day started out with a team of 2 with us, and then they went to team of 4, and they told us like, hey, this is the first time in their career offshore ever really worked for them. And they said going forward, their plan was for every 1 local hire they make, they would hire 2 with us.
Yeah.
They would always pair 1 local person with 2. And that helps dollar cost average it down, but also
Mhm.
helps them keep in their office, more of the leadership, the team leads, the people kind of running these little teams. But then they've got, a couple assistants that are helping them go execute on the work.
Yeah. Well,
That's the model.
yeah, you and I have heard all the stories. People say, I don't offshore. I tried it once. Oh my God, it was a nightmare and so forth. Let's talk about some of the do's and don'ts. In 2024, what's the modern game here? Why do you hear that it didn't work, that offshoring didn't work, and you know we're hesitant about doing it again? What didn't work?
Well, of course, it starts with the communication problems we mentioned earlier, right? So
Yeah,
depending on where you hire people around the world, that is more or less of a problem.
yeah,
Are there people super fluent in English in France? Yes, but English fluency in France is actually one of the lowest in all of Europe, right? So
yeah.
depending on where you hire people, it's all over the board. Communication skills is huge. Level of talent, of course, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there are good and bad talent everywhere as well. The other things that I think are really important is actually the in-house leadership. Like one of the companies I talked to last week, they're like, hey, Matt, we have
Mm,
4 software developers. We have 2 with full scale, actually. And then we have 2 internally. And one of them is our lead developer. And he's like, the problem I always have is I talk to the lead developer about the other 2 offshore guys. And he always says, you know what? I just don't have time to manage them. I have too much work to do. It's a problem with this guy. Like this guy doesn't know how to manage a team, doesn't know how to
yeah.
delegate.
Uh-huh.
And there are a lot of CTOs that are like this actually, right? You hire somebody,
Mm,
make them your CTO, and they're great at being the hero. They're great
player
at,
coach, right?
solving the big problems, but they don't know how to manage people. They don't like to manage people. And I can appreciate that because I'm kind of that guy. I was definitely that guy like 15 or 20
You could
years
do it
ago.
faster yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I can just do it faster myself. Why would I go tell them what to do? But that doesn't scale, right? So this is
Uh-huh.
another key reason of why it doesn't work is you don't have the right kind of system in place, with the right people and processes. They're not set up that way.
So, do they have to have some kind of maturity about people and processes before they start?
They don't have to. It just really is like, are we set up in the mode where there's one person that thinks they're the hero all the time? Or are we set up in a mode where we can delegate this across multiple people and we can all put our heads together?
Right. And of course, entrepreneurs deal with that all the time. I have a hero over here who won't
Yeah,
help the others, and I can't really add any more people
you
because
can't
they
scale.
know everything and so forth. And now they got a liability. And in our peer groups, we hear about, I got to make a move for the CTO who has, gripping the keyboard, all the way out.
And so that's a huge one. There's 2 other ones I would give you on this list. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, you have kind of defined work and undefined work. If you have undefined work, you can't delegate it to anybody, right? You can hire a consultant who can come in and say, okay, well, based on kind of what you're telling me, I can figure out all the things we need to do and I'll help you define it, right? That's
Mhm.
like a higher level strategy kind of work. And in a lot of startups, there's a lot of that kind of work. There,
Yeah, of course.
there honestly is, right? Like we're building a new product, it's a new market, we're trying to figure things out. There is a lot of undefined work. And so that's where if you're trying to offshore that part of the work or outsource that part of the work, it doesn't work. It
I
doesn't
see.
work very well,
Yeah, I
right?
see.
So you've got to have defined work. And then looking at that slightly different, I would say there's 3 levels of software engineering. There is your basic engineering. Then you have software engineering of like, okay, we know how to actually build software and architect software. And then the 3rd level is product engineering. Like I know how to actually build a product, right? Yeah. Which is similar to the defined work versus undefined work thing. But what most people are missing is that kind of product engineering, that they don't have somebody at a high level that has the product vision of like, what are we trying to build and how are, and then how are we going to build it and then how to architect it. And so it's very difficult to outsource, again, that higher level part of the work.
Well, that's a classic problem between the entrepreneur that says, I want this, and the engineer who translates it completely differently.
There's a huge gap
in between that whole thing. And, and AI making engineers more speedy or capable. AI is still not going to solve that problem, product definition problem in between the entrepreneur and the customers and the engineer, the software.
And so I just started a new YouTube channel and going to start a new podcast as well, all about this, called Product Driven. And it's about this gap. It's about, you have engineers, and 20 years ago it was like, hey, I could go to Stack Overflow and I could figure some things out, and I could write some basic code. Now it's AI, right? You can use AI to help me write some code. Maybe I'm, a basic coder or even, a decent programmer. But then the next step up, is that software engineer that has to figure out how to actually architect an entire system. How would you actually put all these things together and actually architect something that's more complex? And then you have the product side at the highest level. And as AI continues to help us, like AI will help like the lowest level of that, right? It helps the lowest level of the engineering, but doesn't really help at all of the like, why are we doing this? Right? Like software engineers are going to have to start thinking more and more that way, of having a product mindset. And that's why I started this new channel, is to like really focus on that.
So let's talk about AI and what's changing for software development in the SaaS game for entrepreneurs and on your team. I mean, are all of your engineers AI powered? They can move even faster at $30 an hour. Now they have, robotic leverage, in their coding. Are all your software developers AI enhanced?
So we've done some surveys across all of our team, and I would say it's about 70% that use, GitHub Copilot or, various tools. Some of our clients don't allow it.
Okay.
They don't want
it's a client preference.
Yeah, they don't want the team copying and pasting code into ChatGPT and stuff.
Right.
And
fair enough.
That's a lot more common than you would think.
Yeah.
So for security sakes.
Yeah.
I would say in general, I feel like AI has created more work for us than it has reduced the need for developers, because all these companies are doing all these projects to use AI, right? Like it requires more software developers to go build AI functionality and build the Greg GPT and whatever it is that people want to do, right? Like it has created more work. And of course, the thing that I always encourage people to think about, if you're reading even stuff about politics or whatever it is, you read stuff about industry news, it's like, why is this news here? Like, who put this news here to get the clickbait to get people to go read this, be it about politics or even AI related
stuff? What are they
stuff?
selling?
Yeah. Who is behind this material, right? And of course, the investors of all this AI stuff want all this buzz about AI, and Microsoft with their GitHub Copilot wants nothing but all of these case studies and all these stories about how great, GitHub Copilot is. So kind of think about it with the crazy politics stuff. It's like, hey, who's putting all this stuff out here? Why, who's behind this? And, I think slowly we're starting to see through some of that a little bit and seeing more real world data. The numbers behind GitHub Copilot and their official marketing make it sound like it's this panacea thing. But then you see, the little guy who writes the blog post on LinkedIn who's like, I stopped using it because I kind of felt like it was making me dumber, and it actually created more problems than it was worth. So I think we're starting to see more of the reality outcome of this, after the hype, like the hype cycle, I think is slowly ending. I don't think it has near of an impact as what the marketing and the press will tell you. I do think it's helpful. I think a lot of developers, it might help them. Like it saved me 15 minutes a day because it gave me this little code snippet thing.
Yeah.
but that doesn't replace like their whole job. That, I mean, it saves them a few minutes here and there, and the rest of the time I feel like it's just fancy autocomplete.
Well, what else is happening in 2024 in development land for software companies, especially the early stage practical ones we're talking about? We hear about the big layoffs in Silicon Valley. Meta just laid off more people yesterday. And I know there's engineers in Silicon Valley that can't find jobs. So there's some developers out of work here
Yeah.
in the States. And there wasn't that way, of course, 2 or 3 years ago. What else are you seeing here that's happening now in the dev land?
I think ultimately you're seeing a correction, right? Over 2021, 2022, the
Yeah.
markets went crazy. Lots of people got hired. Now you're kind of seeing the correction of that. And, and it may take another year or two for us to fully see the correction of that. But as you know, early stage founders, like practical founders that are a big part of your group, they're not raising a lot of money, and they have to
Yeah.
figure out, how do we bootstrap? How do we get things done more affordably?
Hmm.
And no doubt there's more and more development that is being done offshore all over the world. And yeah, that's leaving more and more of these developers who thought they were going to go work at, Netflix and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Google and Microsoft and make
Half a
200 to
million.
$500,000 a year, and go through that whole mess, or finding out like there's not as many of those jobs anymore. And I've never understood why Netflix and them, you see they pay some developers like $500,000 and stuff. It's always kind of mind-boggling, but some of that is coming to an end, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of the going rate for a senior dev in Silicon Valley who has stuck it out with LinkedIn or
Like two or three
Meta.
hundred grand a year.
No, 500,000.
Well, that's
Pretty
nuts.
typical. Yeah, it's nuts.
It's nuts.
And be a while before those salaries come back
How can a
to.
SaaS company do that? Like, how could you start a SaaS company today and be like, I need 3 software developers to go build this thing, and all 3 of them cost 500 grand a year? Like,
Well, you go raise, 200 million, or you just create a profit explosion like Google and Meta and the rest of these folks. So it's not uncommon out
for the
there.
big, I mean, for the enterprise companies, yeah, but for the people starting out, like, I
Oh
don't see
yeah.
how you do it.
No, it's impossible. I mean, how many developers could you get for $500,000
I
at
mean,
full scale?
yeah, 10, 8 to 10. Yeah.
Yeah, and as one guy, there's an argument to be made, but like, is one guy for your typical SaaS company going to be the equivalent productivity on the roadmap that creates impact in your business? No, not really.
No.
Yeah. So you live in Kansas City, and you spend a lot of time in the Philippines, and yes, you're very active and helping in the SaaS community. You're one of the most helpful guys out there, and I'm pleased to have you as a sponsor partner. For the podcast, you've helped a lot of my practical founders in my groups. Now you're running a services business, Matt. Like,
Yeah.
is this fun for you, or what's going on with that?
It is a lot of fun. And I think I know a lot of other companies that own dev agencies, and they do more project work, which I think is a
Yeah,
lot harder, because it's like, we do the project, then 6 months later we're
yeah, you got to find
chasing the
another
next
project.
one.
Hmm.
What's great about our business is it is more long term. A lot of people come to us and they have the same team for 1, 2, 3 years. So makes it a lot easier to build.
Yeah,
It feels a little more like a SaaS
yeah,
company
of course.
because our
Yeah,
customers
really.
stay around longer. We have like less churn, but it is totally different, and it has its own challenges. We deal with a lot more with people, right?
Yeah.
Like, people don't always show up to work, and people call in sick and all that kind of stuff, where software doesn't. But it's what's unique is it's actually a business that makes money. Where a lot of SaaS companies don't. None of the SaaS companies I ever owned really ever made any
Yeah,
money.
me
I
too.
mean, the money that I made for them was mostly from exiting them.
Of course.
I mean, I know people own SaaS companies that are profitable, but when you're early stage and you're trying to grow them, you're investing all the money, you're raising money, you're plowing a lot of money into it. But honestly, one of my favorite parts is it just feels really good to help find people a job. Like, it's such a win-win
Yeah.
of, talk to somebody like you. You're like, hey, I really need a developer, and then I can go create an amazing job and
Yeah.
find somebody to do that job. And it feels great to have like that be a great win-win on both sides.
Well, now you've got hundreds of employees. What's unique about the employment law situation, and all that you take care of in the Philippines that your clients don't have to deal with? They just contract and get a great developer. But what's different about the Philippines?
Every country in the world has different nuances around things like, can you fire people, and
Yeah.
separation pay and all those things, and how they deal with vacation time and paid time holidays, like
Hmm.
all the different kind of regulation stuff. We take care of all of that locally. We give the employee the job security, so if they go work for you and you decide you don't want them, they still work for us, and so
Yeah.
we give them that job security and we find them the next thing. But the big thing we hear from our clients, and one of the reasons they really like working for us, is we can take really good care for them on the other side, right? So we provide their benefits, their paid time off. We throw a big company party every year. I'll be there in December, and we do all these other things to try and create a really good work culture and team bonding and team building on the other
Hmm.
side, just like you would here, just
Yeah,
like
of
what you
course.
would with
Yeah.
your local employees, except
Yeah.
we're doing it 8,000 miles away. And it's a great, added benefit to the team.
Is there something unique about hiring somebody or firing somebody as there would be in Europe, or benefits? Is there something interesting about the Philippines you wouldn't see anywhere else?
Probably the couple things that are unique there. In the Philippines, you're required by law in December to pay everybody a 13th month bonus. So they basically get paid double the amount in December. So
Wow.
we got to write a check for like hundreds of thousands of dollars in December to pay this extra bonus. It's required
Hmm.
by law. So that's kind of unique. If you go to terminate somebody there, it's a little more painful. You've got to really prove its performance issue and document it, which is becoming a little more common here in the US in some places, I think like
Yeah.
California and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you terminate somebody and it's more like a layoff, you have to pay a month of severance for every year they worked for you. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of people that worked for me now for 5 years. So if I had to lay one of them off, like all of a sudden that severance is a giant number. But
Yeah.
they don't have unemployment there.
Yeah.
Unemployment's not a thing.
Right.
So probably I'll give you the weirdest thing there is if you have more than, I think it's 50 employees there, you're required to have a nurse that works for you full time. That's probably the weirdest thing.
And why is that?
I guess because it helps distribute the kind of first line
Yeah. The
of
healthcare system.
healthcare, right? So it's like you sort of have like a nurse practitioner working at every large company that can help, handle basic medical stuff. So imagine not really needing to go to the doctor most of the time for very, very routine things,
Yeah.
which
Well, that'd
makes a
be
lot of
kind of convenient.
sense.
Almost like Facebook office. All your needs are taken
Yeah.
care of. Dry cleaning and a nurse right there. And gosh, that's amazing.
Which is kind of cool and makes sense, except we all work remotely. So having a nurse is kind of
Oh. So do your
kind of pointless.
does your team come to the office?
No,
Or
they're all
no?
remote,
Okay. And they're all over the Philippines, or are they in a certain area around Manila or something? Or
all over the Philippines. Yeah.
wow.
Most
Okay.
most of them are concentrated, but yeah. Yep.
It's really amazing. So
All
how
over the
does
place.
it work if somebody's interested and wants to talk to you? They say, that makes sense. I've been to your website. Obviously, they can click on something on your website. Do you guys have a conversation with them to see if it's a good fit? And then, what happens with the process there?
Yeah, I think schedule a call from our website with our team. We figure out what they're looking for. Like I need a React developer, .NET developer, whatever it is. We see if we have somebody available already, and we set up interviews. They talk to them, ensure it's a good fit, that they like the person. If we don't have somebody, we can go recruit and
Yeah.
go find that person as well. A lot
Mm.
of times we do have people available. Yeah, the key thing there, and another recommendation if you're ever going to do this, is you want to interview that person. Uh, there's a company out of Latin America that does this, that makes you sign a 12-month contract, and you also don't get to interview the person.
Wow.
I mean, that's like two terrible things in a row. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, that's really interesting. I really appreciate you describing what's happening out there, and what you're doing with Full Scale. I know you're growing fast. It's one of these Inc. 5000, fast
yeah,
growing companies and all that kind of stuff.
as a
Congratulations
service company.
there, and congratulations on your new product driven podcast. You are doing more content than me, and it's really thoughtful, very practical, always useful. I read it every time and take notes. So I really appreciate
Appreciate
that.
that.
Hey, Matt, what advice do you have for practical founders out there who are, you know, thrashing about getting their first product up, getting to 1 million in revenue? What product driven advice do you have for them to get up and running?
Well, actually, my best advice I think I've ever heard that I always tell people is you don't want to be the best at what you do. You want to be the best known for what
Yeah.
you do. Whatever it is you do, being the best is not really going to drive success. It's being best known.
Yeah.
Nobody knows the best plumber in their town. They know the one that they see the most ads from and their trucks drive by, right? Like you need to be best known.
All right. Well, there's great advice. I've heard that advice before. On the product side, should we say you should always have an offshore component to your team as you grow, even when you start, or just after you get going? How do founders think
I
about
think,
what's the normal these days?
I mean, it's something where it's probably both. It's like I have a local resource that helps me run this thing, and then I've
Hmm.
got a lot of help offshore that helps execute on all of it.
Yeah.
Um, you can offshore all of it. It's you can absolutely do that, but perfect world is like, hey, in house we've got product leadership, we've got technical leadership, and then we've got a whole bunch of people maybe scattered around the world that help make it happen.
Yeah. Awesome. I really appreciate you sharing your story and the insights about full scale and offshore development here on the Practical Founders podcast today, Matt. Great to see you. Great to hang out.
Thanks again for having me for the second time.
Awesome. Thanks for watching this week's founder interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to hit like and then subscribe to my Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly videos for serious software founders who are building valuable companies without big funding. Check out my blog and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com. And follow me on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going. See you next week.